Carl here from Metal Wani, and this evening I have the rare and great privilege of hanging out with a true icon of heavy metal. From fronting Twisted Sister to establishing a thriving solo career and having stories ranging from everybody from Celine Dion to SpongeBob SquarePants, of course, it can only be the living legend that is Dee Snider. And Dee, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out today, man.
Oh, this is great. Great to talk to you. And yeah, when you hear put like that, Celine Dion to SpongeBob SquarePants. There's not many heavy metal icons who could say that.
There's only one. There's only
one. I don't think the other ones want to say that.
You owned it, my friend, and that's what makes it cool. And, you know, before we kick things off, I've been fortunate enough to have heard your upcoming new record, Leave a Scar, coming out July 30th. And I just want to take a moment to congratulate you, Jamie, and everyone involved on what really is an absolutely incredible record, Dee. Congratulations to you and the guys.
And that is music to my ears. I'm glad it was music to yours. You know, as I was saying to you before on the air, you know, as a creative, you get inspiration and you go in the studio and you really are feeling, wow, you know, this is good, I'm onto something. But unfortunately, with any creative, self-doubt creeps in somewhere along the way, and you start to go from this is great to is this great, and now we're hearing responses from people. We can't wait for the audience to hear it, but it seems like I hit the mark, and that was really important to me.
You really did, my friend. And, you know, for anyone who might be unaware, you had actually settled on the idea of retiring from music in 2019, but then the state of the world with the pandemic and politically even tendered a lot of subject matter, which with you felt compelled to write about. And I know from speaking with artists, a lot of material, reunions and so on wouldn't necessarily have happened were it not for these things. So for you, had none of this come to be, do you think we would have a new Dee Snider record, or would you have most definitely retired, do you think?
You know, when I said, first of all, I didn't announce that I was retiring, but yeah, I've subsequently spoken about this, that I told my family, my friends, my managers, and my band guys, I said, listen, I'm done, I think, with this. You know, but I've written a novel, I've co-created a children's animated series. It's in development. I'm going to be directing my first movie. I've got a horror television show that's in development. So I have a lot of creative outlets. So I wasn't feeling starved for the creativity. I just thought that maybe the recording and live performing aspect of it was over. If not for the inspiration of the world around us, I don't think I would have returned. And mind you, is the first time I've been contributed to writing music since the 90s. With Widowmaker, I stopped writing, and that was the end of that. I didn't feel there was a place for my voice, a place for my ideas, my thoughts, my songs in the contemporary metal world, and I reverted back to playing, you know, essentially what is oldies, retro, whatever you want to call it, with Twisted Sister, and it was a lot of fun doing that. But I have not done anything new where I contributed as a writer since the 90s.
Thank you so much for bringing that all up, because you've been quite transparent in sharing that, you know, this is your first time, you know, penning lyrics for a record, maybe since Widowmaker. And, you know, given that you've not done it in this context in a while and are now tackling, you know, pretty heavy concepts like, you know, pandemics and politics and even your own comeback, was it challenging to capture the essence of everything that was going on? And how did you as a writer synthesize that into all of these songs? Because it seems like you never stopped.
You know, well, that's really good to hear. And you know, I've been sort of hearing that. I've been hearing that people can tell, and Jamie Josta, who is my producer and is my guru, he's the one who challenged me to return to contemporary metal, to make a new metal record with For the Love of Metal recorded in 2018, I think it was, released in 2018. And but at that time, I didn't understand my place again. I didn't know how I fit, and I didn't know how to contribute. So Jamie took the lead on that, and he's a great lyricist, and the words that he wrote that for me to sing were inspired. And he told me he read everything I ever wrote before he started writing for Dee Snider. So I very much, every word that he wrote, I sang. It felt like it was coming from me. And for people to say, well, that's not the same. Well, did Sinatra write My Way? No. Did Celine write My Heart, well, that Titanic theme? No. Did Elvis write Hound Dog? No. But are you going to say that's not their songs? Did they not communicate those songs to you? Did you not believe them when they sang those songs? No, they believed them because they felt it. So you can not write a song and still it can still be genuine and from your heart. So when it came time for me on this record to write, it really was like, as they say, like riding a bike. I hadn't ridden a bicycle in a while, but once I got on it, the inspiration was there. There was so much I was trying to get out, so much I wanted to say with each songs, because what's going on in the world, I was not at a loss for words. There was never a moment where I said, now what am I going to talk about? No, I had plenty of things I wanted to say.
Man, that's a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for sharing that, because like you said there a few moments ago, I know you never officially announced it, but you told your family you were considering retirement, your band, and I'd even read somewhere you gifted your 20-year-old stage boots to your biggest fan.
Yes, I did. People say, well, okay, this is fun. It's true, because I called up my manager and said, listen, I've decided I'm going to do another record. Phil Carson, his name is, his response was, you do know we don't believe you when you say things like that. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, you seem to, I know. And I said, I meant it. And I told my wife, she goes, I didn't believe you either. I said, I gave away my shoes. So I said, 20 years, I've been wearing the same boots on stage. They're like my lucky boots. And I signed them, put them in a box, and I shipped them off to Canada. By the way, Keith Whelan, if you're hearing this, please send me my shoes back. It turns out I need them. So,
sorry, I'm not surprised that nobody thought you were for real, because even if you had retired from recording, you had so many other projects like that you were working on, from books to films and so on, like you mentioned. But when I did read that, one of the first, if I'm being completely transparent with you, the first thing I thought is, damn, I never got to speak with him. So thanks for that. But the other thing that came to mind was the word legacy. And at the time, because, man, you have one, with so many personally, culturally and musically significant moments in there. And when you dropped For the Love of Metal, it was transformative in a lot of ways, and also turned the metal and chart positions on their heads. So I would love to understand where Leave a Scar fits, or you think will fit, into the overall Dee Snider legacy, in your opinion.
To me, this, once Jamie Justice showed me the highway and got me on the road, I knew this, I felt, is where I belong. I'm a fan of metal in its forms. I've continued to stay connected to the community through my 4 grown children now are all metalheads, and they have, through their teen years and into their 20s, have always taken me to shows, played me music, kept me aware of how metal was changing, growing, and I loved it. I love it. Metal is strong, people. If anyone's worried about metal out there, stop worrying. It's alive and well, and the passion is not to be, is you can't compare anything to it. But I didn't know where my place was. Jamie Josta showed me my place. So now I knew. So when it came time, when I decided I got to rock again, and that was actually a phrase that popped in my head that triggered the whole thing, I said, I called Jamie, and the first time I've ever used the same producer 2 albums in a row. Actually 3 if you include the live album. So, it wasn't even a thought. And in our minds, the working title for this record was For the Love of Metal 2. Napalm Records begged us not to call it that. They said it's too confusing. You got For the Love of Metal, For the Love of Metal Live, For the Love of Metal 2. So we came up with another title. But that was just a mental attitude. Even though there's growth, and change. Now I knew what I was doing. I knew now I had a band. Now I knew who my production team was. Now I understood my place in the metal community today. So we were much more focused this time, still though we were continuing on that road.
That's amazing, man. Because, when I listen to this album, there's so many great tracks on this record. Like, I was blown away by She and In for the Kill, Before I Go, Silent Battles. But right now, it's really interesting to watch as the talking point is around your most recent single, Time to Choose, featuring Corpsegrinder from Cannibal Corpse. I remember someone saying to me, did you see Dee Snider has Corpsegrinder on his new track? And initially I was like, excuse me? But I understand that it was your idea as well. And I know you said, you keep in touch with what's happening with contemporary metal and through Shy and stuff like that. What was that song born of, and what led you to reaching out to Corpsegrinder specifically as a guest vocalist?
All right, so we had actually finished the album. That track was not on the record. Napalm asked for a bonus track. Oh. Everybody knows the bonus track deal. Yeah. They want for the import, for the special release. So we went and we wrote Time to Choose. Very heavy, very aggressive, one of the most powerful songs.
Yeah.
Now we start recording it, and it's coming alive, and it's, wow, this song's really good. We're in between takes on my vocal, and I go, hey, it would be great on this, George Fisher. And Jamie goes, George Corpsegrinder Fisher? Like thinking I must know another George Fisher from like the 70s or something. Like, is that your lawyer, George Fisher? And I said, yeah, Corpsegrinder. And Jamie calls me OGD. That's his name because
I like
OGD. Because I'm always pushing it for it to be harder and heavier. And he goes, holy shit. And he goes, I said, what? You don't think it's a good idea? He goes, it's a great idea. Just nobody from your generation ever acknowledges death metal. Mm-hmm. If anything, they make fun of it. Mm-hmm. It's not. And he told me that when he asked George. He said, George nearly got emotional. Mm-hmm. Like he couldn't, it turns out he's a fan of mine, and he could not believe that I wanted him on my song. And I'm so happy about, I didn't realize consciously that this is an oversight and that these worlds don't cross. But I'm glad because I'm a champion of all metal. I believe it all has a place in our family, and it all needs to be supported and appreciated. You don't have to buy it all. You don't have to love it all. But just like a dysfunctional family, you may not like your crazy uncle, but he's still your fucking uncle. So sorry. Remember, still blood. He's blood. So I'm really glad. And Napalm was stunned, and the reaction's been. Nobody can believe that this has happened, but it really works, and I was right. It just makes the power of the message of Time to Choose even more powerful. When Corpsegrinder says choose, I think people are quickly making a choice. Choose. It's like, okay, I'm choose right now. Choose.
Oh, it's amazing, Dee. Because just as a side note, man, I know I said it initially surprised me, but when I even told my own dad that I was interviewing you and that, about Time to Choose and Corpsegrinder, he was like, yeah, not surprised. Dee Snider is one of the living legends who's keeping metal alive and relevant today. So, just a shout out to him, Thank you, Dad. By the way, hashtag good parenting, Dad. Hashtag good parenting. Another thing, he introduced me to very, very earlier on, which brings in my next question is, because a few minutes ago we referenced those moments in your career that had real personal, cultural, musical significance, and something I've been really curious to ask you specifically about is around, this concept of cancel culture and what is and isn't considered socially acceptable today. And why I've been so fascinated to ask you about this is because when I was young, I was introduced to you by my dad, and at the time, your art, you're someone whose art was such a point of contention that Twisted Sister were among the Filthy 15. You'd been summoned to testify before the US Congress and defend not just your music, but essentially your livelihood. So I wonder, do you see any parallel between what happened in the mid-80s with the PMRC and what is known as cancel culture today, or are they entirely separate entities in your mind?
You know what? This is just a continuation of censorship. And there's a big answer here because it's a vast topic, and
sorry,
certainly no. I love talking about it, and just prepare yourself because censorship is always existed. Mm-hmm. People have always been trying to limit art and control art and reel it in and and potty train it, as Frank Zappa said. And a friend of mine once said, and art has always pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of feel sorry for the people who are trying to stem the tide of trying to censor things, because every time they give us an inch, we push further. If you look at where we are now today with censorship, you think back to 100 years ago, to Puritan times. They would actually literally explode if they saw what was passable. The word ass can be used on a primetime television show now. So we keep winning these little battles, and the poor censors keep trying to, okay, you can do that, but you can't do this. And then we keep saying, okay, well, we're going to do this. And we keep pushing and trying to expand it. So that's our job, is to keep pushing the boundaries. It's their job to keep trying to stop us. Okay, that's how it works. This said, in the 80s, that was a very right-wing, conservative, puritanical movement, traditional censorship. Now we've got a left-wing hypersensitivity, PC world censorship going on. We've got people saying, you can't say that because that offends people, and that offends people. It wasn't about offending people back in those days. It was just, you can't say that. This is, we have to protect the young. This is, that's offensive. So there's this hypersensitivity, hyper-defensive, hyper-protective, and it's censorship just the same. And I was very angry at one point during the writing process here when I found myself aware that I might be writing things that were going to upset people.
Wow.
And as a writer, look, metaphor is one of our prime tools. Okay, innuendo, metaphor, plays on words. It's how that's good writing. Okay, when you find a creative way to say something. And when I was writing the song you mentioned, "In for the Kill," I found myself going, "Oh, wait a minute, in for the kill, fire at will." People might be upset about that. And then the louder voice in my head said, What are you doing? what are you doing? You're censoring yourself because you're going to offend them? Do not let the lawyers tell you after you've written the song if we can't put that on the album. As an artist, your job is to be open, creative, and free. You're supposed to let it flow, and let pencil pushers worry about if you can legally get away with it. And I was very angry at myself that I was actually questioning something that I was writing because it might, in this current environment, offend people because I used that word. So it sucks that we're still dealing with that, but I think is this going to be an ongoing battle for eternity.
Dee, thank you so much for sharing that with me. You've no idea how long I've wanted to talk to you about that. And you really do. You're just the epitome of that quote that, the golden art is to comfort the disturbed and leave the rest uncomfortable. So, disturb the comfortable. So
I love that. I've never heard that.
Yeah,
I love that.
The golden art is to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. So yeah, that's you, my friend, in a nutshell. And I know this has flown by for me. We're coming up to the end of our time, and I just have one question left for you.
We can talk for a few more minutes. We started a little bit late.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind of you, man. And you already did kind of touch on it, but one of the things I've always admired about you, and we touched on it earlier on, is that you've never lost touch with what is happening in heavy metal or music in general, which is in an interesting place that has created something of a divide. Some artists I've spoken with over the years, both contemporary and veteran, guys like Graham Bonnet and stuff like that, are confident for its future and believe it's as alive as it's ever been, while others, as again, particularly veteran artists, dispute that it's in a state of retromania where, artists are simply echoing what's already been done with very little innovation or real sense of pushing the envelope. So if you'd be comfortable sharing your thoughts, I know we kind of touched on earlier on, but I'd love to know where you stand on the matter.
Look, these people who say rock and roll is dead are self-absorbed, self-centered. The statement is self-serving. It says, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. because if it can't be my way, it's, it doesn't exist. And because it's changed, it's mutated, which it has changed and mutated, it is not the same thing. And if they open their ears, they open their eyes, they got out of their damn mansions and went to a smaller venue or a festival that plays newer stuff, they would know this is not their heavy metal rock and roll anymore. It has changed dramatically. As far as the idea that you're just recycling old ideas, well, what were they doing? What was Kiss doing? And I say Kiss because everybody knows Gene Simmons is one of the biggest Rock is Dead guys.
Sure.
They were recycling. They were doing Slade, and they were copying all the bands they grew up on the Rolling Stones. So if the bands today are recycling the bands they grew up on, that's just continuing the tradition. Mm-hmm. We're all just basically computers. We only can output what was input. And when it's at its best, it's a nice creative mix of things. Some of my favorite bands, I don't like bands that sound exactly like a band from yesteryear. Mm-hmm. I won't name names. You know what I'm talking about. They sound like Led Zeppelin. Uh-huh. Okay, all right? So that sounding like Led Zeppelin is not new and creative. But take Volbeat. I love the fact, I can hear Metallica, and I can hear ska, and I can hear punk, and I can hear spaghetti westerns, but I never heard it mixed up like that before. Mm-hmm. And I love Volbeat. There's a band called Monster Truck out of Canada, and I hear Deep Purple, and I hear Alice in Chains, I hear Grand Funk Railroad, I hear Lynyrd Skynyrd, but in bits and pieces mixed. It's not replication. It's honoring the past and it's creating something original out of mixing those pieces. And okay, I'm sorry, you got me on. This is something I'm passionate about.
No,
and you want to talk about passion? Okay, one thing is dead: rock stars. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Rock stars need ubiquity. Break out your dictionaries, people. You need to be ubiquity. In order to be a rock star, you have to get beyond the realm of just your genre. And you got that from being on MTV. You got that from being on billboards and in magazine ads and sides of buses, the way it was advertised in the old days. That gave people a broader awareness. And believe me, when Appetite for Destruction sold 20 million copies or Back in Black sold 45 million copies, those aren't only just metal fans buying it. That's when it crosses over into a broader appeal. Okay, that comes from ubiquity. Now, everything's target marketed. You only hear about a band if it's a music form that the computer registers, the algorithm says this person likes. Then you'll be notified in a little banner on the top of your Facebook page. Mm. Oh, by the way, so-and-so has an album out. Okay, or you're listening to Spotify and they give you the music, they feed you what they think you like. Okay, so we've lost rock stars. But as far as passion goes, it's never been purer. It's never been more honest because money is not even in the minds of these young artists. They don't think they're going to get rich doing it. They're doing it because they have no choice. As I said in I Gotta Rock Again, it's not something I don't choose. It's what I got to do. You know what I mean? And I go to these concerts with my kids. It breaks my heart to see that level of passion coming from bands who are just hoping to make enough in CD and merch sales after the show to get to the next gig. And to see the passion from the audience who know every freaking word, but it never gets that massive, broad, where it's out there on a tube show like it used to be back in the old days, And that's the sadness, that it doesn't get the exposure it once got. But as far as passion, as far as talent, as far as song quality and originality, it's there, period.
Wow. Dee, that was probably one of the best answers I've heard, full stop, in any interview I've done, period, mate. And that brings us to the end of the interview, but I hope you don't mind just if I turn this on for just a moment before I wrap up, because that was hands down one of the most enjoyable and stimulating conversations I've had in doing this over the 5 years that I have. Thank you so much for taking. Oh, hi! Thank you so much.
Hey, man.
Thank you so much for doing that, Dee.
You're welcome. Incredible. You're welcome, and I appreciate the things you said about my music and me. It's very flattering. I certainly, I'm appreciative of where I am and how I'm regarded. I didn't. There was a dark period in my life, and I didn't know if I'd ever like come back out of the hole, out of the tunnel. And so to have returned and done things and to be regarded the way you speak is very flattering. And I believe me, I pinch myself every day, going, can't believe you made it through, man. I can't believe you made it through.
Indeed.
So yeah. And anybody who disagrees with what I just said, tell them to come talk to me, Gene. I'll ready to debate him to a standstill. Mr. Don't bother to pick up a guitar. Tell your dad I said, job well done. Tell Dad, job well done.
You're going to make his year with that, D. You're going to make his year. But seriously, right, man, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the amazing album. And thank you for one of the best interviews I've had in 5 or 6 years. And nothing but the best for you and yours for the rest of the year and beyond, my friend. I hope we get to do this again.
We will. Keep doing it. Keep doing what you do. We will.
Have a good day, D.
Bye-bye.
See you later, my friend.